Let's go. Good evening, everyone who's joining us. I would like to welcome you, Elliot, again to this talk show, or should I say, analysis of your book, Zimbabwe, My Home, My Frustration, Articles of Defiance. We're looking at not articles of defiance, but we're going to look at pictures of defiance. So I've got several pictures which are in the book, and I'm going to be asking Elliot to explain, just to tell me, because a picture tells a 1,000 words, and a video tells 1,000,000 words. Okay, so with this video, we're trying to turn these pictures into 1,000,000 words. Right. So the first picture, Elliot, or do you want to greet the viewers first, and maybe your YouTube audience? I've got a YouTube audience now as well. Gone up to 6 now.
Yes, thank you, Derek, and thank you, our viewers. I can see about 8 viewers so far. Welcome, everybody, from all corners of the world, as we meet again every Sunday, analyzing Zimbabwe, My Home, My Frustration book, and also the political situation in Zimbabwe. Everybody, welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Derek.
Thank you, Elliot. So the first picture is of you with former U.S. presidential candidate and human rights leader, the Right Reverend Jesse Jackson. That was in October 2010. Can you tell us how you got hold of the Reverend there?
I think that was the most difficult approach, to unite with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the legendary Reverend of United States of America, who was once a senator and also a presidential candidate in the USA. Firstly, it's a long story, but I'll cut it short.
Yeah.
What happened is I first received an email. That was 2010. That the Reverend was coming to UK in London, soliciting whether I was interested in meeting him. Initially, I thought it was just a spam, so I ignored it. And then after about 2 weeks, another email came. Now with the sort of itinerary as to where he was going to speak. He was going to speak at London School of Economics. Then I realized, well, this is no longer a spam, because there was now the program itinerary of his coming to UK, and there was also somebody who was coordinating within UK, and there were contact numbers, and then I did contact that person to say, yes, I think it would be quite interesting to meet Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a human rights leader, globally well known. And given the scenario that we have in Zimbabwe and the challenges we are facing, having a network like Reverend Jesse Jackson would add value to our struggle. Yeah. So this is how I eventually went to London. As to be expected, there were so many people who would come to hear his speeches at London School of Economics, and it was not easy. Just to talk to him, it was not easy at all. Here was a poor boy from Zimbabwe who is trying to have audience with Reverend Jesse Jackson in the midst of hundreds, and including some bodyguards. As to be expected, he's a very prominent person. He moves with high security.
Yeah.
And then after his speech, he then went into closed session with a few prominent people, or those who had invited him. There were very few. And then I tried to sort of introduce myself to the security, and as to be expected, they were not interested in hearing about Zimbabwe. Presumably they didn't even know what I was talking about. But I said, no, look, just convey this message to Reverend Jesse Jackson because he's aware that I'm here. And then after conveying to Reverend Jesse Jackson, and then I was allowed in the closed session. So that's how I eventually find myself in the same room with Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I then discussed with him, updated him on the Zimbabwean situation and the current scenario in terms of the political dynamics and power dynamics. And we were also at the height of 2010. Yes, we were in the government of national unity, but we are aware that the government of national unity had challenges. So all those, I managed to update him, and hence you saw that picture. So yes, this chapter 6, I then sort of assembled certain pictures of a historical nature. Sort of fixed points in our history.
Okay.
So that is one of it.
Okay, so moving on to the next picture. It's the one where you say, in memory of my murdered brother Matthew Pfebve and those fallen during a hero's commemoration in August 2009. Now, is Matthew the one on the left on that page?
No, those were people
commemorating.
Yes.
Oh,
so those were commemorating.
That's you in the middle.
Yes, yeah. It was way up his murder, yeah.
Okay. Right. The late brutal Governor Bodagezi with his PA, Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
What are your memories of that man? I know you bright shoulders in terms of fighting for political space in Bindura.
Indeed. Maybe our viewers might be also interested that Bodagezi knew me well before MDC was formed and well before I joined the politics as far as MDC is concerned. Because I was a businessman and had some sort of dealings with the Bindura in terms of supplying computers, etc. This is where I knew him before. So yes, that picture epitomizes a person whom I knew as maybe an effective governor before, and then who turned into a very brutal person. So that picture, the reason why I did include it in chapter 6 was to remind people of the brutal Bodagezi. And as you remember, that Bodagezi was instrumental in the setting up of the militia, ZANU-PF militia.
Yeah.
Otherwise better known as the Green Bomber. So yes, in putting his picture there, a contrast with his PA, who was a white lady, and how eventually he became anti-white farmers. It's a stark contrast with that picture.
Yes. The other picture I'm looking at now, first MDC star running Bindura 2000 general elections, part of a 40,000 strong crowd. The showground ZANU-PF disputed the figure and pegged it at 25,000. And you got 11,500 votes from that.
Yes.
So it means you got more than half.
Indeed.
No, 11,000. No, that's less than, because half is 12,500.
Are you saying more than half of the people who attended?
I mean, more than the ZANU-PF figure of 25,000. You got just under half of that.
No,
in terms of the
ZANU-PF got 12,000 something, nearly 13,000. I got 11,000. The difference was about 1,000 something.
Okay.
Bodagezi, yeah.
Yeah. So you almost made it into parliament.
Indeed, yes. It was a close fought, irrespective of the fact that they unleashed all their terror tactics on Bindura. And some of our viewers might remember when Robert Mugabe says, I've got degrees in violence.
Yeah.
He uttered those words in Bindura, and it was after that rally.
Okay.
Yeah. The first star rally of MDC was in Bindura, and that is that picture that you are looking at, which was over 40,000 people.
So what's a star rally? We've seen a lot of politicians are using this term, star rally, and some of them are promising rice at star rallies. Did you promise any rice?
No, it did. I think people were ripe for a new dispensation, for a democratic change. Those people were willing people who came willingly without being coerced, unlike ZANU-PF. So Star Rally would be a sort of a master rally, which is you are then advertising it beyond a city or beyond one place.
Okay.
So you get people who come from the whole province, for example. If you've got a Star Rally in March Central, you get people who come from beyond that town or that center.
Yeah.
So that's what we call the Star Rally.
Okay.
So that distinguishes it from just a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
what I was also explaining is that so the first Star Rally of MDC was in Bindura, where over 40,000 people attended.
Yeah.
Now, in the same token, the first Star Rally of ZANU-PF was also in Bindura.
Okay.
Follows after the MDC rally. So MDC's rally was at showground in Bindura town. Mugabe's is in the rural part of Bindura, Manenga business center.
Okay.
And it was at this business center, Manenga business center, that Mugabe declared that MDC and the opposition the enemy of the state, and that's when he then declared that he has got degrees in violence. And from then he unleashed violence against opposition.
How big was the crowd at their Star Rally, ZANU-PF?
It was nowhere half the number of people who came for MDC Star Rally.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Then you are campaigning deep in rural Msana, the rural part of Bindura constituency in 2000. How effective was this village-to-village campaigning? I see there you've got a megaphone, and
yes.
you're barking into the microphone there.
Indeed.
Yes. How effective do you think was that kind of campaigning?
Let me just show this to my viewers on here. So this is the Musana rural area. Yes, I think it was very much effective. When the MDC started, what we wanted to do was to take the struggle to the people at the grassroots. So that picture about a meeting when I was in the rural area of Bindura, Musana communal area, you can see that there were also elderly people there.
Yeah.
Very much eager to define their destiny. People have been fed up with the ZANU-PF long back, and they wanted to see a change. And that change could only be delivered through MDC, because we had very clear policies in terms of turning around the economy, clear policies in investing in the rural areas, clear policies in empowering the people of Zimbabwe. And it resonated much with the people in the rural areas.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was like those days you would go for 2 weeks in the rural areas. It is the rural areas, people in the rural areas who would protect you. It would be the people in the rural areas who would always amass other people and then spread the word of gospel of MDC. And this is how MDC became so powerful, anchoring both in the rural areas and in towns.
Okay, I'm looking at the next picture of your parents. A few days after release, they were abducted on 14th May 2008.
Yes.
A repeat of 29 May 2000.
Yes.
That left your brother deceased and your father with serious injuries. Why were they abducted, your parents?
And it was not the first time that they were abducted. And ZANU-PF had this appetite that every election they would abduct my parents, torture them. And their crime was only for being the parents of an MDC activist and executive. Nothing beyond that. And this shows how brutal ZANU-PF is. I mean, these are elderly people who want to enjoy their last time on earth. And 2008, they were abducted, tortured, leaving my father with serious injuries. He's late now, and partly because of those tortures that were repeated on him every 5 years during elections.
Then I've got the next one, the picture that took the team that took Mugabe to court in America, New York Federal Court, with Elliot Pfebve, U.S. Attorney Adela Chiminya, and Maria Stevens. Okay,
Yes.
There's the picture. A lot of people may not be aware that you took Robert Mugabe to court in America. What was that all about?
Yeah, I think the U.S. court was widely reported throughout the world in various newspapers, also on televisions. But some might have forgotten. A lot of people still remember that historical event. And especially Zimbabweans who remember that there were journalists who reported the case in Zimbabwe and they were arrested and tortured. And during that time, Jonathan Moore was in charge of the propaganda machinery of ZANU-PF. And he went on the television to say nothing like that happened. The president was never arrested, and there was no court that set in USA, which eventually turned out to be he was trying to do a spin and propaganda.
Yeah.
Back to what was it all about? This was a class action. We tried in Zimbabwe to have those people who especially was implicated in the murders of my brother, in the murders of Chiminya, in the murders of other Zimbabweans to be brought to court. And unfortunately, because there's no rule of law, nothing did happen, and the police were reluctant to prosecute or to file charges. Of course, there was political interference all the time. So the next thing was to say, well, let's look for anywhere within. We tried even in terms of SADC, whether there were any laws in SADC that we could use to get a redress of the murders that we were pursuing. And we couldn't find any recourse in the SADC. We couldn't find any recourse within African Union. And then eventually we managed to get a recourse in the United States of America, because they've got a law that they can try even heads of state in other countries.
Yeah.
So we filed this in the United States of America, and then it went to federal court. Mugabe was summoned to appear before the federal court in New York, and he didn't. So he was tried in Amzania. And it was after that court, and the ruling was there was a compensation for $400 million US. And the court also ruled that they would pursue confiscation of assets towards that ruling. And this is, again, part of the process that eventually made the Congress in the USA to impose sanctions, targeted sanctions on Robert Mugabe in terms of travel ban. So, among other factors. But then, looking at some of you might say, okay, Phil, where are we on that case? After the trial, Mugabe realized that the United States of America ruling would be a very serious one, and he would ignore it at his own peril. He then appealed. After the appeal, it was then pegged from $400 to 70 million US. But he still appealed, and his argument was that he was a member, he was head of state, he was therefore immune from persecution. But the court also found him that while he was arguing as a member of state, the murders, the rapes, the destruction of property were perpetuated by ZANU-PF, and he was the head or the first secretary of ZANU-PF. Therefore, he was guilty as head of ZANU-PF. Mm-hmm. So, yes, so that was the case, and that was the ruling, and it still stands.
Okay.
So that picture you're looking at there is a reminder of that historical event in the United States of America.
Okay, thank you for that. Then the next pictures, they show the violence that was administered to members of the opposition. There is a young man there who was beaten by militia. There are even pictures of some who were not so lucky, murdered for belonging to the MDC. There are also pictures of property that has been destroyed, homesteads that have been burned down. There is one man from Uzumba Maramba Pfebve who was tied to his hut door by militia, and then the hut was set alight.
Yes.
And there is a very disturbing one of a man whose entire buttocks are gone.
Yes.
He was from the Mudzi area, Mashonaland East, brutally beaten on the buttocks by ZANU-PF militia for being an MDC supporter.
Yes.
The man bent with plastic, with burning plastic on his back and arms. His home was burnt, and his animals were doused in diesel and burnt alive.
Yes.
So all those gruesome images showing evidence of the violence which took place.
Yes.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think that shows that violence in Zimbabwe is systemic and also it's institutionalized. It is at the core of the leadership. In other countries, you might have violence perpetuated by individuals, a group of people with no authority. In Zimbabwe, it's a different situation altogether. Robert Mugabe is at the helm of unleashing violence. This is why you find even in 2013, when they actually used Nikov to rig the elections, when they were pretty sure that the rigging mechanism has worked, they didn't command violence. They actually stopped the violence, which means, if you look at it, it is at the highest level of government and leadership of ZANU-PF. The institutions of brutality rest at the doorstep of Robert Mugabe and the senior leadership in ZANU-PF. Now, those pictures that you are talking about, I looked at it that, yes, I might put words into the various incidents of violence that happened in Zimbabwe. And sometimes it fails to sort of convey the gravity of violence that were perpetuated by ZANU-PF. So that's why I decided, well, let me capture in graphical terms, putting pictures, showing pictures of defiance, those people who were brutally, some of them brutally maimed, brutally murdered by ZANU-PF militias and sometimes war veterans. Some of them were very innocent. Some of them were actually MDC cadets who were defying at all odds the machinery of ZANU-PF.
Yeah.
So those pictures, it's a catalogue of the brutality of ZANU-PF, and I want people out there to be able to see the horrific injuries that people have been suffering just for exercising their right, irrespective of the fact that the Constitution of Zimbabwe gives them the right to express their rights, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. But we know in Zimbabwe, although they say there's freedom of speech, there is no freedom after the speech.
Yeah. Right. What I've just noticed, the court case in America.
Yes.
That is, there's a whole chapter on that, and it's the next chapter. And then, so I think actually, since we've talked about it, we can even skip the U.S. court case chapter 8, so that readers can go through the chapter 8 and read it for themselves. And also I've noticed that chapter 9 has got the names of up to 120 names of MDC supporters, members who were killed due to political violence. And there's about 120 of them. So again, I think together with those pictures, I think people can then go through and see for themselves. And on number 14 is your brother, Matthew Pfebve of Mandawi on 30 April 2000. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Right. So I think what we will do is maybe talk a little bit about, because there are a few pictures now of your involvement in the diaspora in the UK and Portugal and stuff like that. Maybe you can just summarize those are the next pictures that appear.
Yeah.
And you've also got a picture with Foreign Affairs Minister of Malawi, David Katsonga, in 1999.
Yes.
Minister of Foreign Affairs. Then you've got pictures in Portugal, in which you confronted Robert Mugabe. Then you've got, after that, there's one that I saw here. That's all Portugal. But there's one with John Makumbe.
Yes.
UZ law lecturer.
It was in Portugal.
Well, was it in Portugal as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe, and he had...
Yes, came to Portugal.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can explain what happened in Portugal. And then I don't know if we can have time, because chapter 10 is just going back to Zimbabwe after 9 years. I don't know whether we can do that today or we can do it next week. You decide.
I think we can do it. We can do that next week.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Portugal.
Yes, Portugal. I think it was 2007. There was an EU summit.
Yeah.
Mugabe was invited, as all the African heads of state, and the summit was in Portugal, Lisbon. So we decided that we would go to the summit and confront Robert Mugabe with clear points, demanding the names of those people who have been murdered by his government, by his party. And we also wanted to do a citizen's arrest on Robert Mugabe on the basis of those murders. There were about, I would say maybe about 22 Zimbabweans.
Yeah.
So we flew to Lisbon. We there were other demonstrators also against other leaders who were tyrant leaders, including Gaddafi of Libya. And Zimbabwean contingent, I would say, I have to be very thankful. They were the most forceful of demonstrators in Lisbon, the most visible. And also, as you would expect of such a historical summit, there were quite a lot of media. The CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, also TV stations in Africa, including SABC. And we capitalized on that to convey our message of dismay of Robert Mugabe.
Yeah.
By that time, Robert Mugabe was also on targeted sanctions by the EU. And we were also demonstrating against some leadership of EU who were supporting Robert Mugabe's presence. And that included the Chancellor of Germany.
Is that Angela Merkel?
Yes, Angela Merkel. And we conveyed our dismay to that. And I think it was right, and it should. The Zimbabweans all over, wherever we are, we should be united, demand what is rightful ours, and demonstrating our dismay against this regime of Robert Mugabe. And that is exactly what we're doing in terms of Lisbon.
Mm.
And I think it was a very successful. We made our presence very felt.
Can you talk to us about your confrontation with Gaddafi's bodyguard?
Well, yes, it was during the same time. There were people demonstrating against Gaddafi. Those were from the diaspora. There were fewer than Zimbabweans. I would say, well, Zimbabweans were about 22, and maybe there were about 7 or so with placards, knowing that Gaddafi was a very feared man. Even people in the diaspora were very fearful of him from Libya. And Gaddafi would be surrounded by female bodyguards. And normally they were teenager bodyguards. So, yes, when they realized that there were posters denouncing Gaddafi, I've never seen such a type of uproar coming from girls. So spinning, using karate against demonstrators. It was quite dramatic. So there was a fist flying and confrontation with the opposition, Gaddafi opposition and the bodyguard. So of course there were few, and then eventually they to flee, and the only sanctuary that they would find safety was within Zimbabweans. So then they came to us for support, and it was only then that that violence ended, and of course the police, riot police, were there in full force. When Zimbabweans supported the opposition, the Libyan opposition, to stand their ground, because it was a matter of numbers. Yeah. Not by design and intent, but I suppose it was like, comrades in arms.
Okay, thank you for those very interesting stories indeed. Next week, we're going to look at chapter 10. Like I said, chapter 9 and chapter 8 are covered in the pictures. But the whole of chapter 8 is just the full court case, which you can go through, and we're not going to read the whole court case here. But it's there in full from A to Z. Then, of course, chapter 10 is about your return to Zimbabwe after 9 years in December 2011. and we're going to talk about that next week. So I would like to thank our viewers for watching, both on Facebook, and we're going to post this on YouTube. We are using Skype to record this, and then we will post it on YouTube soon after. But these two videos, because Elliot was also recording, or was also live on Facebook, so he's also going to post on his Facebook.
Yeah.
So, are there any questions? I don't have any questions today from my Facebook, but do you have any questions there, or any people you'd like to acknowledge? I've got Cyprian and Savannah. I'd like to acknowledge them, but there were others before that. The names have disappeared now, but I know George was there.
I still have a couple of names. General Isaac, as usual, Swift, Prof. Taffy, Brighton GB, Henley, Maburai, still on there. Let me see if I've got any questions there. Yes, a picture tells 1,000 words. Thank you very much. I was watching your interview, and okay, well done. So yes, Prof. Taffy says he watched our protest in Portugal. So he's been following, and he's very supportive of that. So yes, not necessarily questions, but compliments.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we end it here this week. And on next week, we're going to finish the book of chapter 10. But there's another book which you wrote on sustainable development. I think that one will help us to maybe to delve into the economic issues.
Social justice.
Social justice and economic, and really what's happening around the world. I mean, we'll look at that, and then how many chapters is that one? Do you know?
I think about 8, if I remember.
Yeah, so I think we'll go deep into the sustainable development issues with that one.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching, guys. Pastor Mids, thank you for joining in. I think you've joined us when we're just getting finished. But anyway, the video will be available on my Facebook wall. So thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching, my viewers. We'll meet again next week, almost same time on Sunday. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.